Hi, everyone, and welcome, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and welcome to our session today from Longhouse to Schoolhouse. Today's session is Respecting Life, a Sweetgrass Method of Bullying Prevention for Native American Youth. This event is brought to you by the National American Indian and Alaska Native, MHTTC, under the K-12 Mental Health Supplement Project. We are located in Iowa, the University of Iowa, Native Center for Behavioral Health. The National MHTTC Network serves American Indian and Alaska Native across the U.S. and Alaska. We provide TA services plus American Indian and Alaska Native projects and ongoing initiatives to Native communities. This project is supported by SAMHSA. The content is developed by the presenter and the opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of SAMHSA, HHS, or the American Indian and Alaska Native MHTTC Center. Just a few housekeeping rules. This event is being recorded, so please be mindful of what you say and how we treat others. Everyone is muted. However, if you have questions, simply unmute yourself and you will be able to ask the presenter, or you could write it in the chat and we will ask the presenter your questions that you have. We will also leave about the last 10 minutes of today's session for Q&A. This session is being recorded. Before I hand this over and introduce and allow the presenters to introduce themselves, I would like to ask the audience if someone can start us off in a good note by offering up a blessing, a poem, play an instrument, or provide us with some words of wisdom. And I'll give you a few minutes.
Teresa, I noticed that there's others that are trying to connect. I don't know.
Yeah, I see that too.
Okay.
So any volunteers today?
Hi, Teresa. I'll sing a song.
Thank you, Kevin. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Hi, all. Well, my name is Kevin Hale. I'm a member of the Navajo Nation. My clans are Kichichini and Totokoji, born for the Totokoji. And I'm related to my other relatives are clans are Kiani and Totochini. So I just wanted to thank Heavenly Creator for this beautiful day here in Southern California. It's nice and cool, and it's not overly hot, overly cool. It's just perfect. And I'd like to thank Creator for that, making this a beautiful day to start off our 3-day weekend for Memorial Day weekend. Usually today we have a large powwow going on the Borona Reservation near San Diego, and I just want to ask for special prayers and blessings for all those people who miss those powwows. You know, they instead of the joy, you know, we're at home, and many of us are still in mourning for the loss of our loved ones from this coronavirus, and all of those who you know, that are still struggling with employment and financial issues and lingering symptoms from that coronavirus. I want to ask special prayers and blessings for those people, and all of those who you know, may be suffering from a mental illness, substance abuse, that they might find that red road that'll lead them to finding help for themselves. And those of us here on this in this session of this webinar, that's what we do. And I ask for special prayers and blessings for all of you. The time you take to help others, the time you take to research and learn those methods, both evidence-based and traditional, that we combine those and help our American Indian people come out of this pandemic in a good way, and with an open heart and open mind, and that we always continue to use the healing of humor. That's always good, and has always been with us in our tradition, one of our traditional medicines. Thank you, Heavenly Grandfather, for everything you give us: water, earth, air, and fire. And when those come together, they produce us, our light on this earth. Thank you. I'm gonna end it with a song. Thank you. Hey yo, hey, hey yo, hey ho, yo, hey, hey yo, hey, hey ho, yo, hey, yo, hey, hey yo, hey yo, hey, hey, hey yo, ho, yo. Hey, yo, yo, hey, 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 yo, hey, hey, where's on Sha, yo, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, 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 yo, hey, where's on Sha, yo, hey, 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 yo, hey, yo, hey, ho, yo, hey, hey, yo, hey, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, hey, yo, ho, yo, hey, yo, yo, hey, hey, yo, hey, hey, yo, where's your nasha? Hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, hey, yo, hey, yo, where's your nasha? Yo, hey, hey, where's your ice cream? Where's your ice cream? Where's your ice cream? Where's your ice cream? Oh, thank you, and thank you very much for honoring me and letting me open up your this telecast. Thank you, Teresa.
Kevin, thank you. Thank you for the words of the beautiful song. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, I just wanted to, can you guys see the land acknowledgement that's up on the screen?
Oh, Teresa, can you throw that back up?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Again.
I can bring that back up. Come on, Mal. Okay, can you see that now?
Yes.
So although we're here virtually today, we do want to take the time to acknowledge the land and pay respect to the indigenous nations whose homelands were forcefully taken and inhabited. So just take a moment to read this land acknowledgement. And this was created by our team members, Ella and Kelly Driscoll and Sean Bear. So you guys could just take a minute to look over that. Has everybody had a chance to read it? Okay. All right, and I am your host, Teresa Brewington. I am the K through 12 manager here. I am from the Coharie and the Lumbee tribe from North Carolina, and I'm just delighted to be here today. We have two wonderful presenters today. I'm very impressed. I can't wait for the presentation and learn from this presentation. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but we do have Dr. Allison Baez and Dr. Mark Standing Eagle Baez today. So guys, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves and get started, it's all yours.
Thank you, Teresa. Good
Thank
morning,
you.
good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at across the states. We want to say thank you to all of you who've taken time to be with us today. We appreciate your time and your efforts, and we welcome any comments, questions, suggestions as we go throughout the presentation. We'll pause for different opportunities like that, and then even at the end for those who may have questions also. I'm Dr. Allison Baez, and I'm an educator. I've been serving communities across the country, Native communities as well as Hispanic institutions for the last 25 years. Worked mostly in the higher educational system, but I've also served in K through 12 as an administrator and teacher.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Standing Eagle Baez. I'm a psychologist by profession and have worked in the field for over 15 years. And one of the things that I appreciated just hearing, I think it was from Kevin, is incorporating Western methodologies along with cultural methodologies. And for the past 12 to 13 years, in my own practice, it's something that I've woven into providing the treatment and or services across Indian country, and have seen a lot of successful outcomes when I was incorporating traditional practices along with evidence-based and or Western approaches, tailoring it for tribal communities. So it is incredibly important that we not reinvent the wheel, if you will, but there's so many powerful teachings that our ancestors have given us, and I just feel blessed to incorporate them into what we're still providing for our people. So with that, again, I wanted to say thank you for the opportunity and welcome everyone here.
One thing, guys, before you get started, because we want to see your faces. When you're moving, you're blurring out.
Okay, we were trying this fancy background. We were trying to get a Hawaii background, and it was just
Not Hawaii.
but okay.
That's better.
Okay. Okay. So just imagine the ocean behind us and the palm trees. Okay, thank you for that, Teresa. I'm going to go ahead and share the PowerPoint right now.
Perfect.
It's okay. Here we go. Okay.
Our topic for discussion for today is respecting life, a sweetgrass method.
Sorry to interrupt. If you go onto Zoom and on the bottom toolbar, you should see a green button that says share screen. And then that way we'll be able to see the slides. Are you able to see that okay?
Yes, we're.
Perfect. Okay. We can see the PowerPoint now.
Okay, thank you.
And
Thank you,
then-
because we would have started and everyone's like, what are they talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
looks great.
So I do have a quick question. I think this should be okay with all of the individuals participating on the right side, and it's not covering the slides, but if it does, I can manipulate it where I can move it over. the video of each and every one of us that's displayed?
I think this looks good.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's actually like invisible to us, so
Yeah.
no worries.
Okay. Okay. All right. So
So all you see on the screen right now is the presentation itself.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Well, I could see you guys too.
Okay, nice, thank you. Well, our topic, as we started to share earlier, is about respecting life, a sweetgrass method of bullying prevention for Native American youth. One of the things that we have learned in our research over the years is that it's an issue that's been prevalent for years and years and years. And we want to address that accordingly, because so many times it's glossed over. It's people look away. And I think even during the pandemic, it's become more prevalent in other surfaces and areas. So we're going to address that today. As we mentioned, I'm Allison Bays, and this is my husband, Mark Bays, and we come from San Antonio, Texas. And what's really important to us is that throughout the course of our becoming educated and researching, we also look within our own and look to our own traditions and practices. And what you see here before you are our children and our grandchildren, because they're a big part of who we are and what we do with our profession. They're the reason we keep doing what we do, because we want them to continue to improve upon themselves and learn from what we've learned in the field and how they can apply it for generations to come, for better outcomes for the future. And so I want to say, Kevin shared with us through his prayer and through his song. First and foremost, thank you for your thoughtful words and song. You know, all life is sacred, and when we think about bullying, it's a loss of respect. It's a loss of love for one another and being kind to one another. And we look at the pictures that we have here for you of our children and our grandchildren, and that's one of the things that reminds us daily of how we are called to be human with one another and be in relation with one another.
and one of the things that we felt important to share with other professionals and practitioners and parents, educators, administrators, is what Allison had just mentioned, the sacredness of who we are and how we were created, and how we should remember how we should treat others. So the photos that you see are some of the most special and sacred events or moments in our lives that we want to share, because it's special to us. And each of the kids that we see are special and sacred. And it hurts when we see individuals disrespect that by bullying others. So we just wanted to share a little bit about who we are, where we come from, and the grounding that we have in our culture, in our spirituality, in our prayers, our dances, our songs, like that. So we just wanted to share a little bit about that with you all here.
For our time together today, we're going to speak about our goal and how we explain the sweetgrass method as a prevention tool, and really how it serves as an instrument. It's a tool, but it's an instrument to help us figure out, navigate, communicate, collaborate, continue in a healthy journey. We're all on this path together. And sometimes we get lost, we deviate from it a little bit, and sometimes we're not sure how to get back on it. But in our research and in our experience, we know that when we hold strong to our traditions and our prayer life, that we can be rooted in creating a good journey, a healthy journey. So we'd like to share about that. There are 5 specific areas that we're going to speak on today. We know on a national level, bullying's been addressed in all kinds of forms and fashion, with children on and off the playground, in and out of a classroom, etc. But there are other ways that we see bullying take place. Bullying among Native youth is prevalent on reservations, in schools, tribal schools, public schools, private schools. So we want to look for solutions. We can identify the problem, but something that Mark and I feel very strongly about is that we don't just talk about the problems or the issues or the concerns. We want to talk about strategies. How do we see a way out of this? How do we navigate to finding better solutions so that we can continue in a healthy way? Fourth, we want to speak to Native education and the community. I shared a few moments ago that when we're rooted and when we're grounded in our traditions and our culture and our identity, then there's hope for us. There's a better way out of how we do things. There are a lot of great things that come from Western education. We've been trained formally in our Western education also, but we also remember to continue to go back to our roots and our traditions, and that's key for success. And lastly, we're going to speak to a specific methodology as a prevention tool for bullying.
So a little bit about the sweetgrass and sweetgrass itself. So for many of us, possibly all of us, may understand sweetgrass and what sweetgrass is, but not everyone utilizes the sweetgrass the same. That respect that we have in each of the cultures are across the board in how we would cleanse oneself, how we take care of ourselves. But I'm going to share a little bit more descriptively why we chose the sweetgrass. But for those of us that are vaguely familiar with the sweetgrass, it's used as a purification, as a cleansing. And just as the smoke rises, as do our prayers rise, where our grandfathers and our Creator lives, the sweetgrass is also used for healing one's mind, body, and spirit, as well as to harmonize energies. Sometimes I've seen the sweetgrass used by elders when there's so much negativity in a room. I've seen classroom teachers burn some sweetgrass all around the perimeter of the school and even inside their classroom, just to cleanse from any negativity. The sweetgrass is used to cleanse one's heart as well, so that our hearts feel the truth, grow in harmony and balance for compassion, gentleness, and thoughtfulness for others. Similar to our roles as psychologists and or educators, I believe that as Indigenous people, we appreciate and value in clearing negativity. I'm not sure who loves to baste in negativity, but we're here as instruments to promote harmony and providing a welcoming atmosphere with compassion and gentleness.
In the area of bullying in youth, I mentioned earlier that it's a national concern. And I just want to address something that some of you might be familiar with this phrase. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Have you ever heard that before?
Oh, yes.
Sticks and stones may break my bones.
And
but
that's
words
not
never
a true statement either.
Exactly. Thank you. It became widely known back in the 1800s. I think it was like 1870s where that phrase first came about. And it's been used over the course of the last 150 years, even the last 2 to 3 years, specifically in pop culture, where our youth are listening to music and they hear that lyric. They hear that in the lyrics of songs by Pink, Pitbull, and even most recently, there's a well-known rapper named Juice WRLD. And all of these artists, and there's several others. I think Taylor Swift is another one. They all use this little tagline, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And as Teresa shared, it's so untrue. It's very untrue to hear that. And as an adult, we know it, but do our children really know it? Yes, they do. Words hurt our children. And that's something we want to remind ourselves as adults and educators is how we can help our children find a way out of this, how they can find a way to healing the relationships, because words can be damaging across generations. And so when they hear it in pop culture, through music, we want them to know that it is so untrue to hear that, because the words they hear can hurt them emotionally. And we want to know that we want them to know that there's a way out of it. So according to the CDC, thousands of students refuse to go to school and dread the physical and verbal aggression of their peers. They hear it, the taunting, the negativity in different forms and fashion. Mark's going to address that later, as well as the isolation that comes from being bullied. We see it in movies, we see it on television shows, how children become the outcast. And the CDC, like I mentioned, did a study on that and confirmed that. According to the American Medical Association, a study of over 15,000 students, 6th through 10th grades, estimates that approximately 3.7 million youth engage in, and more than 3.2 million are victims of moderate or serious bullying every year. And I'm sure since the study was done, it's increased. With the pandemic, it's on the rise. And we want to find this opportunity to share with you and to talk with you and hear your stories about your experience of the increase, unfortunately, of bullying.
What I'd like for us to just to take a look at are some of the behaviors that we may see out there with even our own kids or grandkids, or at our school, with children. You know, we see rough housing or rough play, usually with friends, often repeated. Balance of power, right? No intent to harm. We're just playing around until someone gets hurt, right? That's usually what we say. And we'll see that, you know, it's friendly and it's both mutual. On the other hand, we'll see, you know, fighting, someone really fighting. It's usually not friends. Typically not repeated. Power relatively equal. Intentional harm doing. The effect is negative, aggressive, tense, and hostile. Now, when we take a look at bullying, again, typically not friends, generally repeated, unequal power, unintentional harm doing, effect is negative, aggressive, and differs for victim and or aggressor. And some of the things that we've noticed and read with a study that was conducted, the common locations I thought was it was very important to put in here just to give us a map of where we may see the bullying occur. Hallways and stairways, classrooms with and without a teacher present. You would think, well, the teacher's there, that wouldn't happen. But sometimes when the teacher's turning around to write something on the chalkboard or is not paying attention, the bullying may happen. In gyms, locker rooms, classrooms with teacher present, a lunchroom, bathroom, school bus. That's a really big one. I can't remember how many incidences most recently, previous to the pandemic, how difficult the bus drivers were, hard to attain because a lot of them were quitting. They just couldn't deal with a lot of what was going on in the buses. And on the way to and from school, the common bullying locations, as well as just waiting for the bus. The direct bullying, for most of us, it should be obvious: the physical, the hitting, the kicking, the shoving, the spitting, verbal, the taunting, teasing, degrading, racial and or sexual comments, and the nonverbal, the threatening, the obscene gestures. So what we've seen with indirect bullying, the physical, of course, is just getting another person to assault someone. Verbal, spreading rumors. Nonverbal, deliberate exclusion from a group or activity and or cyberbullying.
Something that we learned during the pandemic, it's existed prior to that. Something that's become more prevalent is that we've learned cyberbullying is on the rise. There's several ways, and I have just a few of them listed here on the screen for us, that we're aware of, that we know of, from instant messaging to buddy lists, text messaging, in a chat room, social messaging, networking, and blogs. Those are the 6 most prevalent ways that we have seen cyberbullying. in just this past year and a half of pandemic. Instant messaging we know occurs with a small group when you can text someone or be online with someone individually and you send it to someone and they get it instantly. With the buddy list, it's a little bit different. You know, it's a list of friends with screen names, kind of like when you're playing video games, you have a screen name. And then sometimes in different other areas online, you can create screen names to have this group chat going on. Today, we all have a name listed by our photos, by our images, but if we were to change them and have different names that were kind of funny or quirky or mean, it would connotate who we were and what our role played in a buddy list. Text messaging is another simple way that we've learned about cyberbullying. A lot of kids have phones, especially even in elementary school these days. We've seen the rise on that. Chat rooms can be public and private. And so it's more difficult to see the cyberbullying occur in these areas because of the privatization that occurs. Social networking. During pandemic, we've heard a lot about TikTok, Instagram. Obviously, Facebook's been around for a while. And bullying does occur in these places, these common places also. And in blogs, where we can write about at great lengths about other people, what we think about them, what we like/dislike about them. And so we can see that often. I don't think cyberbullying differs any from bullying in general. In fact, it can be a little bit more severe because it can occur at any time, day or night, even without adults being aware of it. The messages as well as the images can be distributed to a wide audience very quickly. Once it's posted on Facebook or the internet or whatever you want to say, whatever you want to call it, it can be easily copied and resent over and over to a larger group. Anonymity is prevalent, and so that makes it really hard to trace when it's been sent out and shared and reshared over and over again. So sometimes it's hard to follow the trail of who began the cyberbullying. And usually parents are not informed. It's very secretive how a lot of youth are cyberbullying one another. And so it's real important for us as the adults, as the responsible folks, trying to help guide and shape and nurture our young people to figure out how do we help our parents understand this type of bullying? Because it's not, as Mark said, it's not the physical, it's not what you see happening in a traditional school setting. Many times this happens, like I said, after hours when adults aren't around to observe and watch. Before we go any further, I wanted to see, are there any questions or comments so far? We've been talking about the different kinds of bullying, direct, indirect, cyberbullying. Any comments or questions?
I do have a quick question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so you did say parents are usually not informed. Is that because the child doesn't want to go to the parent to tell them? Is that where that's coming from?
In many cases, yes. In cyberbullying, because it's kept like on a phone or a computer, parents aren't usually informed right away unless the child and or a teacher or whoever might find this out in the school setting is willing and or able to reveal it. Obviously, as a teacher, as an educator, that's the first thing we want to do is inform parents what's going on to help work on this situation together and heal the situation. But a lot of children are very secretive of what they write and or send in their messaging, in their online activity. Does that answer your question, Teresa?
I'm trying to figure out, are you saying with that the children are afraid or don't feel comfortable going to their parents as the victim?
I think, yes, I think, I mean, the question that you're raising is very important. And where that lies is it could be a factor of children having this fear. And it's not to say that all parents are not informed. You have some parents that they know your password, they know their kids, and they will go in there and they know how to get on your phone and they will search. But for the most part, children are the friends that they're making, the circle that they're involved. um, will may share just a little bit with the family. Oh, this is a group that I'm with, but not in detail what is happening. Some of the kids that are bullied um, may not directly share this with the family out of embarrassment. So we see some of the kids just feel, well, maybe this is just this incident and it won't go any further than that. And we're trying to look at how we can get the children to be more assertive and share disseminate any of that information to their families. And we're looking at some of the behaviors of other kids, just saying you're a tattletale, and we don't know if that's encouraging the kids just not to say anything. So we're trying to look at what's the underlying factor for children not to say, hey, I'm being bullied. And a lot of the incidences that we've seen where kids unfortunately have attempted suicide or have even been successful, that they had been bullied for a long time, and the family members are not seeing that those text messages or those messages that are sent on the video. They're seeing their behavior change, but the kids aren't being open and saying, hey, I've been bullied since yesterday. For the most part, we would see parents be proactive and stop it right then and there. But looking at cases where parents are saying, I didn't realize this was going on for such a long time.
I could see the fear of a child, being afraid to inform a parent or another adult because of what you said, being a tattletale, or how it's been handled incorrectly in past years, sometimes making the situation worse than better.
And even looking at the behaviors of the parent.
Yes.
I'm not going to say anything because I know what my mom's going to do. I know what my dad did last week, and made a scene in front of everyone. And so there's not just one factor, and every child is different, and every home is different. But informing the parents that this is happening, so they can have that relationship with the child, is a very sensitive path to walk or dance, to trust each other, in hopes that the parent's always going to be there as a supporter, but also to look at how we're going to work on it and address the issue. But sometimes I know some of the children are afraid because they know how their parents behave, and they just rather not say anything because there'll be a fight down at Bashas' or at Walmart, or something like that. So it's happened in the past, and so it's different for children. But that fear, yes, is up there.
Any other questions or comments about bullying, different types of bullying?
Catherine Palmer said it's the snowball problem is so true, that it starts small and youth not understanding boundaries, that it gets deep before asking for help, or not understanding how to ask for help, and that she sees this issue a lot.
Absolutely. And just that word snowball, we can just all envision how it just starts and it just gets bigger and bigger. And some of these kids, again, don't know how to do that. I mean, I could say the same for adults, but these are kids, and we're expecting them to have all the tools when some of these children are needing support and or strategies and or suggestions and or support. So it doesn't get to that point, that third layer of intensity, but that we address it when it's just occurring like that. So the communication and the collaboration in the Sweetgrass method is critical, so that we have that dialogue with our children, not to get all into their business per se, but when it comes to them being attacked spiritually, mentally, verbally, physically, then we have an obligation as people, as parents, as family, to step in and to provide that nurturing guidance and support. There's something that I wanted for us to be aware of, and it's not a part of this in-depth coverage of bullying, but it's important, and it's an offshoot of it, and it's a whole training in itself. But this is lateral violence. I was in Canada not too long ago, and just heard so many stories of how intense it is becoming, not only for the youth, but for adults. And I just wanted just to share just a little bit about this, just for our awareness. And lateral violence, one of the consequences of oppression, of historical trauma, is lateral violence. It happens when people who are victims of dominance turn on each other, then confronting the system in itself, as Indigenous people being oppressed by the oppressors. And I look at what was done to our people, inevitable, but the way it was done. So when we talk about bullying, I can look at the United States, or how people treated us. And that's a whole other week-long seminar if we want to talk about that. But just thinking about this, but we're taking it out on each other, our own family, our own people. It occurs when opposed groups or individuals internalize feelings such as anger and rage, right? And manifest them through other behaviors. We start gossiping, we're really upset, we're jealous, we don't know what else to do. We should start putting our relatives down. We start blaming them for everything. And as I mentioned, some of the adult bullying behaviors can also be a manifestation of lateral violence. So we're starting to see some of this with our youth. And it's another very, very important topic. I didn't want to get off topic, but just as a seed to be planted for important dialogue in the future.
We know that some of the risk factors that are underlying for bullying occurs strictly because of where the children live, on a reservation, for example. It's not saying it's exclusive to that, but there was an article written by Owen at the Navajo Hopi Observer. And it's written as that the youth on reservations face stereotypes, misconceptions of what it means to be a Native American from the main society, and inherent historical bullying by the major culture, generational poverty, generational alcoholism, and drug addiction, poor nutrition and diet, substandard and inadequate housing, and or family structures that are not intact. There's an American author named Sherman Alexie who writes a book about this and what it means to be a Native youth growing up on a reservation, but he goes to school off the reservation, and how he experiences that bullying just because people know that he's from the res, and how they treat him or mistreat him just because of where he comes from and where he goes back to on a daily basis. He goes back to his family. He goes back home every day after school. And so when he's at home, he's safe. That's his safe place, his safe haven. But every time he goes to school, it's a different story. It's been a few years since I read the book, but it's a really good, I think, read for teachers, educators, and parents to understand what some of our children go through.
Something that I was really excited to see when this came out some years back was a young Mescalero Apache, it's Coloradus Mangus, that he went out and he spoke at Capitol Hill about the issues and concerns of suicide and the constant bullying that was happening at this school. And I remember seeing this, and I was incredibly proud, and just felt so excited and empowered just to hear this young man just speak about things that are happening that he cared so much of was destroying the people that he loved. In 2011, there was a study that was conducted, focused on American Indians and Alaskan Natives, the scourge of suicide among American Indians and Alaskan Native youth. And it showed in this study that bullying has emerged. Now, this was 2011. Bullying has emerged as a contributing factor to the sharp rise in American Indian and Alaska Native youth suicide rate. And the reason I bring up it, this was 2011, are two things. One, that was a long time ago, and it's obvious that there has been more. Just the research that we've conducted, it has increased tremendously. What is interesting is there is not a lot of information on bullying studies conducted on the reservations. We happen to have firsthand experiences with the tribes that we work throughout the United States, and are able to gather information so we can help one another, not to take it and not bring it back, and to share with the communities on what is helpful and or useful. But what we're still looking is for new research that's out there for tribes. And what resonates the most is people that are coming from the outside to the inside of the reservations, trying to understand is the importance of trust. And even when we're speaking with our children about bullying, that trust that needs to be formed, so we can provide those strategies for an individual. Having that trust is just as important for the youth, for parents, and for us as professionals trying to help within the tribes itself. The bullying prevention intervention curricula, there's some curriculums that are out there, bullying prevention programs, the ABC of bullying, curbing school aggression, bullying and victimization for adults, and what they can do to help. So there is information out there. One of the important points that I'd like to make is most of these approaches and our curriculum are not Native American based, or research that have been conducted solely by Native Americans for Native Americans on the reservation. So the data that's collected is good data. But if we're trying to use, and I've seen some programs use some of these curriculums and tailor it there for their particular tribe, seeing some of those curriculums work. Some of the prevention curriculums and life skill programs for youth from Native American authors is there's a Michigan Chippewa bullying problem of prevention. There's a Zuni life skills development, and Dr. Therese Laframboise, American Indian life skills development curriculum is something that was conducted and researched, and something that she continues to utilize. So currently available version of the Zuni life skills development program is a school-based suicide prevention curriculum designed to address this problem by reducing suicide risk and improving protective factors among American Indian adolescents from 14 to 19. So it's not necessarily the Zuni life skills on bullying, but there are some components of bullying where individuals may feel like they can't do anything else and may have thoughts of hurting themselves.
A lot of what you've heard in the last half hour or so is all about the issue, the concern, the problem of bullying. And one of the things that Mark and I work very strongly on is finding solutions for some of these. It doesn't mean we have all the answers. It means that we look for other experts in the field. We look for other people on the journey looking for healthy outcomes, working with children and their families. And so we have a few suggestions for educators and how we can address it, even as parents, in regard to in the classroom setting, as well as cyberbullying, which takes place usually off campus. Some of the things that we've heard across the country is that parents and teens want to be questioned. They want to be involved in the solution. They don't want to just have administrators telling them what to do. So surveying the students is really important, trying to find out where are these hotspots happening. You know, is it really just in the hallway or in the classroom when the teacher's gone? Tell us where you see a lot of the bullying happening, types of bullying that there is, the support that they expect. They don't just want the adults to say, these are the rules and regulations. They want to know that they're actually going to be heard. And I think that ties in with some of the questions that we heard earlier. When do the children or the teens not want to tell their parents, or are they not informing their parents? It's because maybe they feel they're not being heard. So they want to know that the support that we say we're going to give them, that we're going to follow through with it. Something else you can ask teens is, what do they do when they see it happening? Do they participate quietly, watching as an observer? Do they walk away? Again, looking at the last 15, 18 months of our lives and all of the issues that have happened in and out of the classroom, where people are protesting and showing how they feel about the current situation in the world, in the United States. And lastly, you might really want to ask the students, if you could disclose to somebody, who would you go to? Who would you feel comfortable speaking to about this? Not everybody's going to go to a school administrator, maybe to the school teacher, maybe a school nurse, maybe a peer leader. So ask the students, what kind of program do they want to see, and how do they see it playing out? How do they want us as adults to address the situation? The second suggestion that we have here for you is to create a task force or a committee to discern the need based on survey results. You're asking all these questions of the teens and the youth of what's going on, then how do you address them? There's not one way to solve the issue. There's not one way to speak on this. There's not one way to do any of this. We can learn from what Mark shared about the different tribes that he's learned from and how they're addressing the issue. Look at all the communities that we have across the country, across Indian country. I'm sure, although we haven't researched it well enough, we don't have it written about in books across the country, I'm sure there are some methods that are working and that are developing, and people are changing and modifying and making better to serve this issue. We can also have a suggestion box, an open door policy, if you will, where students can anonymously, or a teacher can anonymously put something in a box, and we can have a school administrator or another teacher, somebody responsible for that, reading what's going on, reading the suggestions of what's going on or what the needs are at the school. Having an open door policy is key. I know when I worked in K through 12 settings, that's one thing I was very upfront about. It didn't matter to me what was going on. If I was on the phone, if my students could see that I was around, if I was in a room, my office, they were welcome to come in and share whatever was on their minds. And I think it's real important that students know that they have someone they can go to. And lastly, post the expectations and guidelines regarding bullying. We can talk about it and talk about it and talk about it at all kinds of meetings, but if we're not sharing the information, sending it out via email to parents, to teens, posting it in public spaces for kids to know what's going on and what the guidelines are, then how are they supposed to follow the guidelines? How are they supposed to know what the guidelines are, or who they can turn to for help?
I want to interrupt you just for a minute. If you could go back to that, what you were just talking about. When you're talking about posting expectations and guidelines regarding bullying, are you referring to the follow-up when
Yes.
a bully is being reported?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's very important, because I have seen in the past where as bullying is not being handled correctly by the powers that be. And it sometimes creates more harm than good for the one that's being bullied.
Yes.
And then there's a couple remarks in the chat I wanted to share too.
Sure.
One is kids have been told that they don't want to be seen putting a note in a suggestion box, and I could definitely see that. Also, maybe make a suggestion that it's secure so that other students can't open it.
Mhm, mhm.
Someone else said, I've heard of schools using secure anonymous Google forms to prevent that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really key with technology. Ella can probably attest to this, that there are other smarter ways to go about this than just a simple suggestion box, in the front of the school principal's office. A lot of schools have homeroom. That's one thing they can do first thing in the homeroom. The teacher can invite everybody to answer a certain question. And as a part of that question, kids can know that they can always add to that, talking about bullying or whatever it is that's on their minds. But to have some kind of safe space for students is real important. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, one of the things that that is critical, and I've seen for so many years, is the confidentiality. When kids are bringing up issues and concerns that someone's bullying them, and I'm not saying all teachers, but I've just experienced this with the teachers that I'm having to sit with and to consult with, is teachers are extremely overloaded with so many things. And the last thing they need is disruption. So they try to nip it in the bud by bringing the two kids together and saying, hey, Mark told me that you're picking on him. And of course, Mark's like, oh my God, I thought I was just telling you. So they look at Kevin and they say, Kevin, are you picking on Mark?
No.
He says no. And then the teacher looks at Mark and says, Mark, is he picking on you? And of course, I'm going to say, no, I know it was somebody else. And there's been so many bridges that have been burned because they don't trust that information getting out. So what I strongly suggest and recommend for professionals, principals, school board, teachers, is to pull the student aside, get the information, and pull the perpetrator and let them know that they heard from other students, so they don't know it's from that individual. But I have just have been in so many conferences where the teacher will just call them out right there. I don't have time to deal with this. Let's both go outside, and this is what he said. Are you doing this to this person? And of course, then you have the follow-up where there's retaliation. And that's nothing new, because how it was initially disseminated and or processed was not done correctly. And then we're putting that child at greater risk. So it's even, I've seen where we're able to nip some of that in the bud through a lot of staff development or professional staff development, and providing classroom management is when we address that, and we bring up the bullying and kids don't feel safe. Even though there's a teacher there, I'm not going to tell Mr. Mark because he goes out and he tells the other person. So I'm not going to say anything. And that could be the same for the kids not wanting to tell their parents, because they will go over to the other parent's house and start something. So there's a way to do this where we're first and foremost, the safety is paramount. That's number one. And then we can work on strategies for parents and our teachers so that the child remains confident and confidential on the information, and address the bully. And we've just seen it backfire so many times where the teacher looks at Mark saying, well, Mark, you said there's not a problem, right? Okay, let's get in your seats again. And that kid's just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get beat after school for being a rat or being a tattletale. But
right, it actually, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
No.
but you're absolutely right. It increases the bullying.
Absolutely.
So the person becomes more of a target now that he's told somebody. And I have seen that time and time again. There's a lot of comments in the chat that I wanted to also
Sure.
to say. People have a lot of things to say here. Linda said, we teach mediators that when the situation is bullying, that they don't do meditation, or is it meditation? Mediation, sorry. Mediation usually just empowers the bully, and that's exactly right, because you're bringing the bully out in the open. And then Angel said, so in working in the urban community with middle school and high schoolers, what if the bullying is happening by someone who is not in our programming? How can we advocate as caring adults when we don't know who is doing the bullying, but we know the young person is being affected?
Repeat the end part of that question, Teresa, one more time.
It sounds like they know somebody's being bullied, but the person that they're being bullied by is not going to their school.
Well, that's really important. I shared something on the next slide, if I may. And this is mostly with cyberbullying, but it can tie in with that. It's bullet number 3. Sometimes we have to involve the authorities when necessary. Sometimes we have to, reach out to the principal. I remember when I was working at a K-12 school, and it was a private school, and right next to it was a public school, an elementary school. And there were kids interacting in those two environments. And so we had to get the principals together to address the issue, the leadership, because if we felt it wasn't just a neighborhood problem or a child problem, it was beyond that. So if we could work collaboratively with the principals, the administration, it could be addressed more efficiently and effectively. I hope that helps. I know with cyberbullying, we need to monitor what students are doing. And I know with children today who use computers pretty much for every class, if not beyond that, 5 or 6 of their classes, we need to make sure that they know how to use them safely and responsibly. So a lot of children and their parents even have to sign these little waivers saying that they're going to use them respectfully. Using technology respectfully is important. We can include.
And I can tell you too, that some schools, when it's cyberbullying, if it doesn't take place on the school grounds, they won't touch it.
Yes.
Now, some will get involved, but others won't.
And that's unfortunate. I think that's it's really hard when it comes to cyberbullying, and that's why I think we need to involve authorities, beyond the school principal, beyond the parents, to reach out to others, because we don't know how extensive it is. If it's just, and I don't want to say that loosely, but sometimes it's just text messaging harmful words to one another, and sometimes it's beyond that. Sometimes it's breaking the law, and that's why it's important that we need to keep current with laws regarding cyberbullying. There's a website called cyberbullying.org, and it shows a map of the United States. And if you click on your selective state, whether it's Iowa or Texas or California, it lets you know very quickly how the laws impact that community or that state, whether there are sanctions in the school or whether against the community. It tells you how each state has decided to uphold or implement laws regarding cyberbullying. And so I think that's real important. Like you said, sometimes it happens off school grounds. It usually does, unfortunately. And how do we address them? Tribal leaders, elders are really key when you're on a reservation to get involved with this, because they have a council who usually can intervene and address these from the tribal law perspective. When we lived in Arizona, I know that was something that was very key, even though, we worked in the school settings. It wasn't just the school being impacted. It was an online platform back at that time called MySpace. It was real popular prior to Facebook. And MySpace was being used across the reservation with public schools, private schools. It didn't matter where your kid went to school. And a lot of kids started using it to bully each other and say things, hurtful things to each other, no matter where they went to school. So that's when the tribal leadership stepped in to start offering training and suggestions and pulling parents together and administrators together to address this issue, because of something at the time was very simple platform to communicate with each other and talk to each other and have fun with each other. It started escalating into something more. So sometimes we have to go beyond what we're used to in a school setting.
Just briefly, because I know I'm just looking at the time. There's been several opportunities where I met with administrators, the principals, even the superintendent, school boards, and the BIA police, when things really started to affect some of the kids with situations that were not on campus. So it was a collective approach, and the sweetgrass method that I'm going to share really holds each of us accountable to partner to continue to communicate with our resources, tap into their area of expertise, where we had some kids that were being bullied by gang members, not on the school campus, they were right off the school campus. So we had to go beyond the teachers' concerns and the principal's concerns, where we had to sit down with the school board and have a meeting of the minds and come up with some suggestions and strategies, where the school board members had a meeting with the tribal police, where we partnered with them. Again, and it's looking at how we can continue to work with each other. The resources are there. There are some things that they can and cannot do, and that's where the partnership and or the meeting comes into place, what we can do to help support to make sure that the child is successful in the end.
Before you, somebody wanted to say something, go ahead. Was someone bringing up a question? Okay, I thought I heard something. Linda did say, do you know of any tribes that have passed laws about bullying?
There is something happening right now that I just read a couple of days ago. I have not, but they are looking into where some of the kids are being bullied, and the perpetrators living right outside the reservation, and they can't touch them.
Mm.
And I don't know if it's northeast area. I'm trying to remember the tribe, but they're discussing right now with the state to incorporate that, because it's been a serious issue and a loophole where people can go on the reservation and do whatever and then come out and say, hey, you can't touch me. And we're seeing that in other areas. So I'm looking closely, and it looks promising that this particular law is going to be passed. So I'm really interested in looking at the outcome.
We'll research it a little bit more, Teresa, and share that with you if other people
Okay.
have concern or question also.
One of the areas that we were just discussing on partnering and how we can collaborate, and just looking at what has been researched out there, and it indicates that when the family and the elders, tribal entities play an important role in teaching our children, right? And so the acceptance and or approval are sought from older members of the family is critical. And a lot of the stories that we have that has really helped understand the dignity or the respect of life are from the stories that we've heard from our elders. So by incorporating the elders in our community, we may just think they're old, they can be thrown away. Like these kids are so into like Xbox, PlayStation, and what do we have in common kind of thing. But there's so much that we can learn and continue to learn from our elders in incorporating the partnerships and the tribal roles and effectiveness from family members. They are also a source of wisdom and service teachers of traditions, customs, legends, and myths. And our grandparents especially have symbolic leadership positions in the family community. One of the things that I incorporated in a couple of the tribes was having some of our elders come in and work with our Head Start, early Head Starts, and share stories. So it not only gives our youth an opportunity to hear from the mouth of our elders the paved way that they made for each and every one of us to be where we're at today. They can hear it from them, and the importance of respecting each other, the importance of taking care of one another, the importance of ceremony, our traditions, our songs, even our foods, right? So having that opportunity also gives the elders that we've been working with an incredible reason for appreciation. And there has been so many that have even expressed, I just felt like I've been forgotten. I'm just over here, nobody knows about me. But it's just so nice. I want to say cute, and I don't know if that's appropriate, but when you see them come in, some of them will dress traditionally. They're so excited to teach. They're so excited to share their stories, to share any wisdom, any knowledge that they may have for their children. So it's a very powerful and impactful opportunity.
When it comes to the student-teacher relationship, it's really important that we share in our experience and the studies and the research that we've been doing across Indian country, is that there are a lot of indicators that the teacher of the American Indian Alaska Native student plays a tremendous role in teaching and learning process. And it's very important for Native and non-Native teachers alike to really learn the culture for whom they serve. There are some cross-cultural, for lack of a better word, tribes teaching. A Navajo may go down to the Havasupai and teach down there, or vice versa. So it's really important that we honor and respect who we're serving, who we're teaching, who we're on the journey with when it comes to the student-teacher relationship. On a Native American approach to bullying, there are two quotes I wanted to share. One from Luther Standing Bear from the Oglala. Out of the Indian approach to life, there came a great freedom, an intense and absorbing respect for life, enriching faith in a supreme power and principles of truth, honesty, generosity, equity, and brotherhood as a guide to mundane relations. Secondly, from Geronimo, I was warmed by the sun, rocked by the winds, and sheltered by the trees as other Indian babes. I can go everywhere with a good feeling. These two quotes that we found in our research really speak to the idea of when we're rooted, when we know who we are, where we come from, and we have that connection, then we can promote and honor our tradition and who we are. And we can treat each other with respect. When we don't have that identity or no connection to where we come from, then it's a challenge. It provides a challenge for us that we really don't need. So it's really key that our children and our students have that, because we know that our people are resilient. Our communities are resilient. We can go throughout history, and I know I've had conversations with you, Teresa, and Julia, and even Kate, about how we don't see ourselves in the everyday textbooks, but we're still here. We don't see ourselves or hear about us in all of the histories or stories, but we're still here. So something that we want to make sure that our children are aware of and can address and know is that we have a place in society. There's developing research about communities and resilience that suggests the importance of community, family, and general Native cultural values as being critical elements in the resilience and well-being of our youth. These protective factors, they protect us, they protect who we are when we know them. They're identified in a study on resilience in American Indian families. First and foremost, to have a sense of belonging. When Kevin started, he identified his clans. That's key when we are able to identify who we are and where we come from. That lets you know that I belong somewhere. Our spirituality, our prayer life, and we can have a sense of a connection to the Creator. Again, that's a protective factor. When we know our language, a lot of our youth cannot speak our languages fluently, and that's okay. But if they can hear it, understand it, identify it, then again, they have that protection. When we know who our extended family and friends are, a lot of our children go off to boarding schools and they don't know who to address or who to ask for help when they're outside of their traditional community. But it's important that when they go off or when they're outside of their home, that they know that they have extended family and friends that they can count on. It's real important that our children maintain their cultural-based practices, their knowledge, and their skills. Again, they don't have to be fluent in everything. They don't have to be experts in everything, but to maintain that, that's our role as parents. That's our role as the leaders. With our community, you can't ever go wrong with humor. Humor ties it all together, and that helps us become resilient. That's how we tell our stories, a lot of us. That's how our stories and our traditions carry on.
In fact, I believe we are the ones that coined that laughter is medicine. And now everyone seems to be using that, but that's part of who we are as Indigenous people.
So one of the things that Mark and I have done research on is looking for methodology that can be applied to our community across Indian country and figure out what is a commonality, what is something that not everybody, but a lot of folks would see and know, have some kind of connection to. And so we titled this the Sweetgrass Method because for us, we see it as a way of interweaving themes and ideas and people to be applied to how we live, how we respect, how we love, how we honor our tradition and our culture. So the Sweetgrass Method is a bullying prevention tool that we've decided to address particularly with youth. It represents several things, but the three key things are looking at the braiding strand of introspective, collaboration with families, and continuity.
And the strands, just like a braid, within each strand, there are many strands. And the reason, again, we chose this was because we have many approaches, yet we're looking at the sweet grass as an herb to use to cleanse one's soul, one's spirit. And so we knew this was something to use for the sacred. But I've come across, we both have come across tribes across Indian country, Mexico, and even in Canada, that not everybody uses sweetgrass, but they can relate to the weaving and or stories there. So the first strand, and I want to just go over this briefly just for the sake of time, is the first strand of the braid is about us. How do we see us? Are we prepared even for the things that we don't know? Are we culturally sensitive? That's great, but are we culturally responsive? Are we doing the right thing? So this first strand in the braid is giving a self-check. Hey, do I have the right information? Am I competent enough to suggest certain things about what I do know and maybe the things that I don't know? And again, it's just grounding you as a professional, as a teacher. How are you even doing that day? The second strand in the braid is collaborative. And us coming together, collaboration is we're better. Our two minds are, what is it? Two minds are better than one. But that we come together to work for others, and we consult with others. When in doubt, check it out. We want to make sure that we are on point. So for us as educators, just valuing traditions and ceremony is just as important. When making suggestions and or strategies for bullying for our Native youth, we look into oral traditions. We look into our stories, songs, paintings, nature, etc. I truly believe that our answers are here and they are out there. The stories are there, the songs are there, the paintings are there to give us that guidance and motivation to do what is right. So we want to live in harmony. We want to walk the red road. We want to walk in beauty. So partnerships with families and community is essential. And when providing bullying prevention and or intervention support for the schools under the parents, it's important that we don't just think we know what to do. I have a degree and I'm going to do it myself. But when we use the Sweetgrass Method, it's not about us. It's about together we can partner with each other. If it's the principal, if it's the school board, if it's the tribal police, to help that child or the family, then we come together to partner together. And the last strand is continuity, the continuous strand, that we don't just come together for this training today. And yes, I heard about bullying and let me just go about my way again, but that we continue to fight the good fight, if you will, to work on better strategies to work with our children at different tribes throughout the United States and in Canada, what is going to work for them. So I say the sweetgrass is flexible, just as it is on a blade of grass. So if you have grass, you step on a blade of grass, eventually that blade's going to bend back up. So I say that we look at the sweetgrass as an analogy, as us as individuals to be just as flexible. So when we don't feel like we're being heard, that we look and regroup and or see what needs to be done to tailor that will work, that we do that, and that we continue these efforts so that we can provide holistic strategies to each of the reservation school, one braid at a time. But continuous strand is to also look to see if what we suggested or recommended, if it's even working. As I mentioned earlier, there's several curriculums that are out there. Most of them are not native based, but we want to make sure if what we're buying is working. Not like, hey, look at all of the curriculums that I have. And we can even look at some of the curriculums that we're using in school. Just because we have this and it was ordered and we're using it doesn't mean that it's working. It could mean that because you're a great teacher and you're tailoring it for those kids. So looking at the method in the schools, the NEA on focus, the study says that culturally responsive educators, and I can go as far as even saying psychologists, practitioners, administrators, must teach students about empathy and compassion, because it starts there, and establish social norms of what's expected, right, from our students. As soon as they walk in, these are our expectations. As parents, we say these are our expectations. We don't allow them to go off course, and then we'll say, well, we kind of just roll the dice. But we look at how we can be more culturally responsive and provide information so that they will feel connected and empowered and better prepared to take that step of addressing bullying when it does happen.
According to the website stopbullying.gov, bullying negatively affects the atmosphere of the school and disrupts the learning environment. Student achievement suffers, teacher morale declines, adult-student relationships suffer, and parent confidence and trust in the school erodes. And we know we can do better. We've seen it in small steps and big steps. We've seen it across the gamut in public schools and private schools. There's a great author, American author named Maya Angelou. And one of her famous sayings is, when we know better, we do better. And as educators, those of you who took the time to be with us today, we're all on this journey together. We're learning how to do better for our children and for our future generations. And the conversation doesn't stop here, doesn't end today. We keep working towards providing those safer, better environments for our children so they can become educated and do their very best, not so they can be impeded and weighed down because of these negative issues. We want them to be successful. In 2008, there was a study done by Duran, and he writes that history has resulted in forms of intergenerational trauma that continues to have an adverse impact on the mental health and psychological well-being of many Native persons, contributing to much of the psychopathology that is encountered in Indian country. When we know better, we can do better. When we can address it, identify it, and address it, we provide hope for our people. We provide hope for our future.
And as practitioners and educators, administrators, family, community, we can make healthy changes in our schools and communities, and obligation to our youth and the traditions that have been handed down from our ancestors on respecting life. This method that we both shared weaves the parent community, student, and school as three main contributors, like team players or team members in success of reducing bullying behaviors. So we take the sweetgrass and look into many ways that we can provide those strategies in the end to help the student continue to succeed, not only academically, but mentally and emotionally as well.
You know, we've had a lot of time to listen to a lot of information, but we also want to address any questions or comments. Again, we say thank you for the time that you've given us. Thank you for the time for listening. And for those of you who are chatting and posting and doing all kinds of other things that we couldn't read up quickly on our screen, we want to say thank you to everybody. Yeah, I
want to also say thank you for everyone for the opportunity. We were trying to go, I think it happened the way it happened, and it unfolded the way it unfolded like that. I wish we had another hour and a half to really look at some of the areas of concern. But again, wanted to say thank you. Klaatsokamati, gracias, Yahweh. Yes.
Teresa, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm leaving with more questions. So I have some questions, but I do want the audience, because we're running out of time. If they have questions, I'm going to give them the opportunity to go ahead and ask. So Edwin, it looks like you have a question. Would you like to go ahead and ask?
Yes, thank you, Teresa. Kia ora na koutou, hui mai nei tēnei rā. I wanted to just kind of focus on something. And by the way, the presentation was well received, especially for myself, because on Tuesday, I'll be going out to the Confederated Tribes of the Go Shoot Nation to work with the youth for part of the summer. So it's good to go armored with this sort of stuff. And I do realize too that sometimes when you burn sage or sweetgrass at an event that anybody's at, it seems to bring a sense of relaxation and introspection. So I like that idea. But more importantly, I wanted to talk about your statement about language. I'm going to refer to the fact that the gentleman that gave us the prayer did something that my people do all the time. We call it the pepeha, where we identify our river, our mountain, our ceremonial plaza, our tribe, our sub-tribe, and now we teach all our youth to do that in our native language, and it gives them a sense of place. So I would encourage everybody, if they can do the same type of thing for their youth, have them cite the tokens of identity. They could do it in their language or in English, as was done earlier. And like I say, I think it really helps to develop your sense of place. And when you have that, it's a little harder for people to push you off. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thanks, Edwin.
Thank you.
Hey, real quick, before you answer that, can you pull back the sweetgrass pictures? Someone wanted to see that. And I also wanted to say there's several links that Mark had shared with me about the sweetgrass method. So we'll be sharing that with you guys as well. And everybody will get a copy of this PowerPoint too today.
And Teresa, I just wanted to say, this is our strand here that we just put on the table and took a picture. It's usually green, right? It's grass, but I had it in the car and it smells so beautiful. Well, after a while you have it in the car, it's dried, but nonetheless, it gives us a visual to see the braids interwoven and then the strands within the strands like that. So yes.
Yeah. So did we answer his question, or was it?
I thought maybe it was just an affirmation,
Statement.
Edwin, that you were sharing. Yes. So thank you, Edwin, for sharing.
And does anybody else have a question? I just want to say, so the way that I took this is we need to be proactive about how to combat bullying and lateral violence, because it's really one and the same. And being proactive, we need to acknowledge and do better for ourselves and our people, like the historical trauma, ACEs and things like that. So we need to build a better positive environment for our Native community and our Native students to prevent bullying. Is that what I'm hearing the outcome of this is? Because in my experience, the way schools have handled bullying in the past just doesn't seem to work.
Right.
Yes,
Am I
to all
wrong
of
in
the,
saying that?
no, yes to all of the above, Teresa.
Yes, and not being reactive, being proactive. There's a difference. And when we look within our own teachings, even Edwin had alluded to the songs, the language, what it describes, the connection that we have. Those are all teachings. And
Yes.
the bullying is another metaphor of an area that we need to address. But a lot of our teachings, whether they're through songs or paintings, dances, we look and a lot of the answers that we have, yes, absolutely, being proactive, connecting with our traditional practitioners, our cultural advisors, and looking at more ways that are creative, that we can implement more of a cultural responsive approach to the bullying issues that we are seeing across Indian country.
Yes, agreed. Anyone else have any comments, suggestions, anything? I am curious, can anybody say that they have a good bullying program in their school? Gilbert, are you trying to say something?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I worked with adolescent teens before out of the Colorado River Indian tribe. And we did a drum group here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And then what we would do is go into some of the summer camps, thinking about summer coming up, and do a lot of traditional songs for some of the kids there. It was for children that were in childcare services. And so they had been through a lot of traumatic events, domestic violence and things like that. But what they were trying to do was reduce some of their aggressions while they were out at summer camp, and just having that kind of like having the older teens teach the younger kids some of those techniques and some of the ways to channel, their energies in other ways. But I definitely love the sweetgrass method, and just wondered if there had been any other research or just any other stories about using drum groups, and then maybe using like older teens to work with younger kids.
Well, I know that the concept that we developed on the sweetgrass method, it's so flexible, no pun intended, but it's so flexible to incorporate just how the braid is, and using three of the most significant teachings of a tribe, or a drum song, or the drum, putting the drum together, the hide, the wood, how you're going to lace it. There's so many teachings within that we've prayed, we smudged before, singing songs around the drum, using the sweetgrass, and even having group therapy, if you will, around a drum. Instead of an office where chairs are at, we would gather around a drum with some of the students, and we would have group, but we wouldn't say group. We would have a circle. We would have drum circle, and the stick, the drum stick that we would use, like if I was the head singer, I would share with the students and lay the format, and then pass the drumstick around. So whoever had the floor had the stick, like almost the same concept as a talking feather. So there's a lot of opportunities there, Gilbert, where you can incorporate that. Again, going back to our teachings, not to reinvent the wheel, but the teachings of our ancestors are there for us to tap into. And I believe that's what our ancestors wanted, is to continue to revive those teachings that have kept us alive and resilient as we are.
Definitely. Thank you.
So it has been modified, not modified, but it's more of a framework to be utilized.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm. Okay, one more question and then we've got to get off because I know that we're past time. I do wish we would have put this in 2 sessions, but they will be back doing some more great work with us. So expect them back very, very soon. But I thought this was a great discussion and that we could have definitely gone on longer about. So any other questions before we say good afternoon and goodbye and great weekend, because it is the Memorial weekend and hopefully everybody is off on Friday. Excuse me, Monday.
Monday.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you today, guys. Thank you guys for coming on here. This was wonderful, very informative. We are going to see you back here very soon. Thank you all the participants, everybody on here. I appreciate you coming here today. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you have sunny weather and just enjoy yourself. Love nature, love your family, and get back to work on Tuesday. Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. We'll see you
Thank-
soon.